Hi, I am Christian, and with my partner Alfonso, we will introduce you to our project Close Reading to Visual Text. But first, Alfonso is going to tell you our objectives.
Our general objective is to demonstrate through a close reading how important is historical context to construct meaning in the production of visual texts, and our specific objectives are to analyze stylistic features in cartoons and photographs. The other one is to find a common shared universal theme between the visual texts.
Thanks, Alfonso. In our project, we will analyze three different artworks: Silence and the Doormat, both created by the cartoonist David Lowe, and the portrait Red Lenin, created by the artist Andy Warhol. Alfonso, could you explain the concept that connects these artworks?
The concept that can be identified in the visual text is culture. To illustrate, in the Silence, ordered to depict the US and the UK by the use of personification. The author used typical outfits associated to the named nations during that period. In the Doormat, Japan is portrayed by a personification which was made by using elements of the Japanese military's uniform, and a typical katana used by these individuals. Finally, in Red Lenin, the author uses red and yellow colors to represent the Russian leader, colors associated with the communist nations, China and the Soviet Union, being this ruler the first to use a communist regime as a method to rule over the Russian people.
Once the connection between the artworks and our objectives were established, we came up with a proposal.
Our proposal is, through a use of the OPCVO and the Big Five methods of analysis, aspects such as background, purpose, content, and audience will be deeply analyzed. Consequently, audiovisual material will be produced using Wondershare Filmora 9 and OBS Studio to illustrate the analysis made regarding Andy Warhol's artwork called Red Lenin. This analysis will be made to demonstrate the importance of the context of the production of visual texts, to be able to truly understand the message which the author wants to convey.
Now, we will proceed with our analysis of Red Lenin. Let's take a look on the context and background of the portrait.
Red Lenin is a portrait of the Russian leader Vladimir Lenin, created by Andy Warhol in 1987, being part of the pop art style, which is a style that emerged in the UK and the US around the 50s. This type of style was constantly used by Warhol on his artworks. Regarding the author, Andrew Warhol, better known as Andy Warhol, was a New Yorker born on August 6, 1928 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Warhol turned into one of the most important artists of the 60s. He wandered into a wide assortment of artistic expressions, including filmmaking, video establishments, and composing. During his infancy, he lived in the working-class neighborhood of Oakland, with his parents Julia Warhola and his father Andrew Warhola. Warhola's family were Byzantine Catholics, however they kept their Slovakian roots in the last part of the 50s. Warhol started committing more thoughtfulness regarding painting. Therefore, the type of paintings Warhol performed in the idea of pop art in 1961. Besides that, pop art was focused on mass-delivered business merchandise. In 1962, he got an abrupt reputation when he started showing his Campbell's soup jars, Coca-Cola bottles, and wooden copies of Brio cleanser cushion boxes. In 1964, Warhol decided to open his studio about art, most known as The Factory, a Georgian silver painting construction designed by great architects. The factory was placed in New York. Besides that, it became a scene of extravagance. In 1968, Warhol endured an almost lethal weapon shot injury from the hopeful and extreme women's activist writer Valerie Solanas. The shooting, which happened in the passage of the factory, perpetually changed Warhol. Some people highlight the son of this occasion as a factor in his further grasp of an inexorably far-off persona. The brush with that alongside mounting pressure from the Internal Revenue Service, coming from his basic position against President Richard Nixon, appeared to have incited Warhol to report his life to a perpetually fanatical degree. He would direct Every action, including taking note of the most minor cost and utilized understudies and colleges to translate the substance of which might add up to more than 3,400 sound tapes. Segments of these records were distributed after his death in 1987 as the Warhol Diaries. During the 1970s, Warhol kept on investigating different types of media. He started distributing books and exposure. He also tried with videos, being that during his life he created 60 movies. A portion of his most renowned movies incorporate sleep, which portrays writer John Giorno eating and resting for 6 hours. During his final days, Warhol experiences interminable issues with his gallbladder. All his health issues led him to go to the hospital. He endured difficulties that generated abrupt heart failure and finally he died on February 22, 1987 at 58 years. After his death, Warhol's name has been the subject of much discussion. According to a biography, he is widely believed to have been a gay man, and his art was often infused with homoerotic imagery and motifs. However, he claimed that he remained a virgin for his entire life. The character portrayed in the artwork is Vladimir Lenin, a Russian Marxist leader who created the radical communist faction, the Bolsheviks, and later on would be the first ruler of the Soviet Union. He was born as Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov in the city of Livanovsk in the year 1870. In 1889 he publicly declared himself as a Marxist. This caused him to be exiled to Siberia. However, he decided to move to Germany and then to Switzerland to meet other European Marxists. During World War I, Lenin returned to Russia with the help of the Germans, who wanted Lenin to create an internal crisis in Russia to force the nation to abandon the war. After arriving in April of 1917, when the Russian Revolution already started in February. Once Tsar Nicholas II abdicated from the throne due to the protests in the nation, a provisional government was established, which continued with the involvement of Russia in World War I. However, peasants and workers demanded more changes. As the government was unable to provide what they expected, to seize the power, Lenin formed the Red Guards, an organization made up of factory workers, peasants, soldiers, and sailors that on November 7 and 8 captured the provisional government buildings in a bloodless coup. Once in power, the Bolsheviks got Russia out of World War I, proclaimed a Soviet rule, and made Lenin the leader of the world's first communist state. After 3 years of civil war and an assassination attempt, Lenin's health started to decline in 1922, suffering from strokes, until he died in 1924, being Joseph Stalin the new leader of the Soviet Union.
What about the target audience, Alfonso?
The main target of the artwork are the Americans because the place where Warhol was most known was the US. Then, regarding another point of view could be the elite people in which Warhol was trying to expand his artworks. That could be seen in others' artwork that he introduced politics and historical characters.
Regarding the purpose of the artwork, it was created to diversify Warhol's artwork portfolio, being an artist that portrayed multiple types of individuals or objects, such as Hollywood celebrities, rock stars, or popular household items, and he was looking for a new theme for his art, being the topic chosen politicians, creating portraits of political leaders such as the Che Guevara, Mao Zedong, and Jimmy Carter. Alfonso, what could be perceived on the content of this portrait?
The artwork is made by the portrayal of the Russian political leader, Vladimir Lenin, verse from huge numbers of the shows that appear to characterize his oeuvre. Lenin is placed with a book in his hands looking forward, with a big red beard and yellow skin color. Besides that the opposition of a dark red scenery with insignificant lines utilized to recognize his face and hand. The non-appearance of unessential detail and concealing prevents the watcher from focusing on whatever else other than his face. The sinister tone is the one which is applying for this artwork. Warhol is trying to transmit Lenin's feelings through a red image in his background. Concerning his past, the sinister tone is because of all the deaths caused by Lenin's revolutions. The author is making a direct relation between Lenin's thoughts and reality. The mood used in this artwork is a tense mood. Warhol is trying to communicate through a painting the background of Vladimir Lenin in one image. First of all, the red background could be analyzed in two forms, one for the Bolsheviks and the creation of the Red Army, and the other one is all the blood behind their revolution against the military.
Now, I will proceed to explain the stylistic devices on this portrait. The main stylistic devices of Red Lenin are the red and yellow colors. As it is perceived, these colors cover the entire artwork. This is a symbolism of the communist nature of the character depicted, as these colors are associated with the flags of communist nations, such as the Soviet Union or China, being that Lenin was the first communist leader of the Soviet Union. This symbolism is used to help the viewer to make the connection between who the character depicted is and from where he comes from. Another stylistic device used on Red Lenin is the focus. Warhol uses a red color on almost the entire portrait. However, with the use of minimal black lines and yellow color, the author is giving more importance to the face, forcing the viewer to look first at the face of Lenin. How is the artwork structured? Warhol's artwork only contains an illustration of Vladimir Lenin, without including any body copy at all. The illustration itself contains watercolors being yellow, black, and red. As mentioned before, these colors help to set a symbolism regarding the character's background. Regarding perspective, it is presented to the viewer as centered towards Lenin, maintaining a balance between the two halves of the image. After analyzing the illustration and the historical background of it, we appraise that the dominant topic of Red Lenin is inequality between social classes and the distribution of wealth and resources. The character depicted, Vladimir Lenin, lived in order to make his aspiration of a communist society in Russia into a reality, an aspiration generated as the Tsar Nicholas II maintained all the resources for himself and his family, while the Russian people starved until death. This is apogee through the stylistic devices presented on the portrait. Therefore, we examine that the theme presented is how society oversees individuals to follow a certain trend regarding their political life. Thanks for listening our presentation. Have a nice day.